We are starting with a new chapter, that is chapter 15, Biodiversity and Conservation. Biodiversity is a very common term and conservation also. All of you are familiar with it. Now, when we see around us, we see a large variety of plants and animals. And these plants and animals, they range from the tiny grasses, very small grasses, to some of the huge trees like eucalyptus and many more. We have many other trees which are very huge and big. Also, the plant size also varies, ranging from very small insects like ants and all to large animals like elephants and giraffe. So when we talk of plants and animals, we find that there is lot of variation, and this variation ranges in shape, size, color, etc. Had different types of habitat they are living in, different we find the shapes and all, sizes and all. So we find there are several kind of variations in different aspects. Besides this, there are millions of microscopic organisms. So the microscopic organisms are also thriving on this planet. And the microscopic size, the microscopic sized organism also are in millions. So if we talk of a single species of, let's say, ants, we find that ants are around, there are 20,000 nearly. This is expected. We are still not able to identify all the species, but it is expected that there are more than 20,000, greater than 20,000 species of ants only. 3 lakh species of beetles, nearly 28,000 species of fishes. So there are lots of variety when we talk of the organisms that are inhabiting this planet. Now, India is also a mega diverse country which has nearly 45,000 species of plants and 91,000 species of animals. So we are also very rich because we have a hugely diversified variety of plants and animals. Now, the presence of, when we talk of biodiversity, the presence of different kinds of organisms reflect the biological diversity. So all the plants and all the animals which are inhabiting this forms the biological diversity. Now this biological diversity is also called as biodiversity. So thus we can say that biodiversity is the variety and variability of life on earth. And this diversity, when we study further, we find that it is not present only at the species level. It is present at all levels. That means it can be at the genus level and it can be at the other levels also. Now, the term biodiversity was popularized by Edward Wilson. He popularized the term biodiversity, and according to him, the combined diversity at all levels of biological organization is biodiversity. So if we study it is the combined diversity of all organisms at all levels, and these levels of biological organizations. So what does this mean? That if the biological organization has various levels, and at these various levels we find biological diversity. Now, there are various interesting facts about biodiversity. Now, in spite of having so much of studies going on for the past several years, we have been only able to identify only 1.7 to 1.8 million organism, which is less than actually 15% of the total organisms which are found on this planet. And when we study the mega this thing the mega uh, number, if we find it is nearly the 14 million of more than 14 million microscopic organisms are inhabiting this planet. So there is a lot of variation and variety available on this planet. Now there are various levels of biodiversity. Biodiversity varies, or their levels are the genetic diversity, species diversity, and ecological diversity. Now we will talk about the genetic diversity first. Genetic diversity, as the name suggests, it is the variations of genes within species. So genetic, it is the variation of genes within species. And as a result, a single species may show high diversity. So, what is the outcome of this? A single species may show high diversity. This is the genetic diversity. Now, this genetic diversity can be caused by several reasons, and there can be multiple reasons for the genetic diversity. When we talk of the genetic diversity, it actually enables the population to adapt the changes in the environmental conditions. So what is happening over there? It provides, or advantages are, it enables the species, because there is a variation in the genes, and only those individuals where the changes are favorable, they will be only surviving. So what happens is, it helps the species to adapt to the changing environmental conditions through natural selections, obviously. So through natural selection. Now this, the species will have which is showing more diversity, will be having more chances for survival. So the genetic variation and variability forms the basis of speciation, that is the formation of, or the evolution of a new species from the one which is already existing. The species which is having lower, obviously we can make out that a species which shows lesser genetic diversity leads to uniformity. That means it will not have much variation, and the genetically similar crops will continue to thrive, but the ones which are more variable will have better chances of surviving. So it can also suppose if we have a crop which is genetically similar, then it will have more chances of or it will be more susceptible to diseases, or the effect or the insects can attack, so it will have less chances of survival over a long period of time. But a species which is having diversification, or which is better adapted, will show much better rate of survival over the period of time. So the genetic diversity actually plays a key role in the maintenance of diversity. So this helps, actually genetic diversity helps in maintaining ecological balance. The reason being, because more the number of species, then the diversity obviously will be higher, and also the ecological balance will be maintained. Coming to the species diversity. Species diversity, when we talk, species diversity is different from that of genetic diversity. Now, species diversity actually is the variety or number of species within a given region. So, it is the variety or the number of species in a given area. Now, this is uh, actually when we try to understand, it is each, since the species which we are talking are units of diversity, and they play a major role, but specific roles in ecosystem. And loss of species can have direct impact on the entire ecosystem. So species diversity is very very important, and it is the relative abundance of a particular species which is inhabiting that particular area. Now, species richness and species evenness, there are two terms associated with species diversity. Now, species, when we talk of species richness, it is the number of species per unit area in a given region. And it generally increases with the area of a given ecosystem. It is actually a measure of the species richness, that how rich the species is. For example, if we take a sample area, if we take a sample area and we find that there are, suppose, a number of species, b, c, a and a. Now these are inhabiting a particular area. So we find over there that in the first case, the species richness over here, we find three species occupying a particular area. On the contrary, if we talk of species evenness, it is the number of individual of the different species. So it will lead to more number of variety. So there are three species over here, and the proportion is 1 is to 1 is to 4. we find different types of areas over here. And if we find the third symbol, suppose if we compare it with this, A, B, E, C, D, and A again, we find more variation over here. So this is species richness over there. And in the first case, the species is among all the two we find the species B, the B group is having more variation. Now, when we talk of genetic diversity and species diversity, there is a difference between the two. Genetic diversity is the diversity of the genetic characteristic, and we have studied the genetic variation in case of medicinal plant, that is Rauwolfia vomitoria. This is a good example of genetic variation, Rauwolfia vomitoria. It is found in the Himalayan region actually, and it is showing great genetic variation. It is also known as devil's poison pepper. This is an example. So it shows the uh, great genetic variation, and it is due to the active chemical which is known as rizapine, which is a tranquilizer, and nearly 50,000 genetically different strains are found of this particular species. So we find over here a lot of variation. When we talk of the species diversity is it in a forest there may be large number of different species, but only a few member of each species. So there are a lot of variation. This helps in adapting to the changing environmental condition through natural selection, whereas it helps in biotic interactions. So when we talk of the advantages, helps in biological interactions, and also it provides stability of community. Again, the we can understand these two terms better. Genetic diversity is we find different breeds of the dog, like we have talked about Rauwolfia vomitaria, which is found in the Himalayan regions, and it is 50,000 species of this particular genetically different plants. But here, when we talk of the species diversity, there in a forest, when we talk, there may be different trees, and certain species may have more members than the other members. So there is a difference between the species diversity and the genetic diversity. It is like this, we can understand better. If A is a species, it may have A1, A2, A3, and all because of the genetic variation, whereas it is completely different. So both the terms are quite different. Now let us try and understand the ecological diversity. Ecological diversity actually, the at the ecosystem level, that is, we have over different kinds of geographical regions in a given biosphere. Like we have forests, we have grasslands, we have uh, we have different areas. Estuaries are there, coral reefs are there. So in a given or in an ecosystem, we find great ecosystem diversity, and all the organism that inhabit that area will have a different kind of adaptability to that particular system. So ecological diversity ensures more diversity, because in India, for example, the deserts are there, the rainforests are there, the wetlands are there, estuaries are there. So we find more ecosystem diversity as compared to countries or places where the uh, ecosystem level there is less diversity. That means they are having only the grasslands, or maybe the rainforest itself, or the desert region itself. Since India is rich in ecological diversity, it is a mega diversity point also. So the diverse biodiversity is very important for sustaining the ecosystem.